Celebration of Life for Jeff Ullman, and we're glad you all can make it. My name is Todd. I'm Julie's older brother, and this is my least favorite thing to do. So I think she chose me because she knew I wouldn't hog up the program. I think we put plenty of time to listen to those that are here to share memories with Jeff. Julie wanted me to remind you that there's over on the memory table. Please visit that. There's a little token, something that you can take with you to help you remember Jeff. A little guitar pick and a lapel pin. Also, she wanted you to know there's plenty of food out in the hallway, so please help yourself and enjoy that as well. So as we spend time remembering husband, father, a good friend, if you have a memory spark of Jeff and it's something you'd like to share on a table as a card, please take the time and take a pen and write down your memory and share that with Julie, with Jordan, and with those that are spending time to remember Jeff and his life and his legacy as we celebrate this. So again, like I said, I don't want to take too much time here. If you grabbed a program off the table, it's outlined there, and we'll just follow through that program. And again, we're not in a rush, and we're here to enjoy a time together, remembering the life of a wonderful man who called many people his friend, and many others his uncle, and a lot of my nieces and nephews is the evil Uncle Jeff. So with that, I'll turn the time over to the program there. Seconds. Jordan? Okay.
Can everybody hear me? Yes, I wanted to quickly say that really appreciate everybody coming. It means a lot to me, really, and it means a lot. I'm sure Dad has loved it. And just want to say that real quick. And, this was his guitar, and I decided to play one of the songs that he played probably more than most. So this one's called Blackbird. Anybody is? Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You are always waiting for this moment to arrive. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken lies and learn to see all your life. You're only waiting for this moment you feel free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into light in the dark at night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly all your life. You're only waiting for this moment to arrive. You're only waiting for this moment to arrive. Not sure what's next on the program because I have not read it much myself. Thank you. All right, I believe it is reflection time.
Rich.
Rich?
Mike.
Mike? I don't see him. Oh, thank you, sir.
Good evening, my name's Mike. I've known Jeff for a long time. In 1964 and 65, I was in the 6th grade at St. Francis Catholic Grammar School in Phoenix, Arizona. And one day, about midway through the school year, this tall, gangly fellow showed up in our classroom named Jeff Ullman. He had just recently moved to Phoenix. For some reason, I don't quite understand why, our teacher, who of course was a nun, asked me to take Jeff under my wing and kind of show him the ropes around the school. I'm not sure whether that represented divine intervention. After all, she was a nun, or whether she was just an extremely astute judge of character and thinking that we'd get along well. But in fact, that was the start of our truly lifelong friendship. I had a couple of other friends at that time as well. So typically during the day, a school day, 4 or 5 of us would all hang out together at lunch and school breaks and whatnot. But pretty quickly, Jeff and I and one other friend, a fellow named Tom, ended up also spending a lot of time together after school as well. That was a different time and place. I think back then, kids our age, probably at least us, the 3 of us, probably had more freedom than most kids our age to wander around and engage in mischief and whatnot. We didn't do too badly in that regard. We at least managed to avoid the attention of law enforcement. My parents were Irish immigrants, and as you may know, the Irish are fairly famous for their hospitality. And most of my friends enjoyed spending a lot of time at my house. That was certainly no exception with Jeff. He'd come over and spend occasional weekend nights at my place, and his parents would reciprocate, and I'd spend a night or two every now and then at his place. But in the afternoons, Mom would make some tea and serve up some warm soda bread, and would all sit around the table bantering. When I first introduced Jeff to my dad, who spoke, and both my parents spoke Gaelic, I told Jeff that my dad would really be impressed if he greeted him with some Gaelic words. So I didn't know much Gaelic myself. I knew this one phrase. The phrase is "Pogue Mahone." Does somebody know what that means? If you want to know, ask me afterwards. I'm not going to say it aloud. But in any event, when he greeted my dad with "Pogue Mahone," my dad initially had this totally shocked expression on his face. Lasted for a few seconds, and then of course he realized he would put Jeff up to this. But nonetheless, they had a pretty good time with it, and Jeff ran away, and Dad proceeded to chase him around the house. We always had a pretty good time together, one way or the other. When we managed to finish grammar school and graduated, of those 4 or 5 good friends of mine from grammar school, only one of them, Jeff actually, went on to the same high school I went on to, which was Brophy College Preparatory in Phoenix, Arizona, a Jesuit high school. And that's where Jeff really began to blossom into his sort of lifetime career as an entertainer, if you will. At Brophy, he became really engaged in the drama department there, and acted in just about every play that was ever put on by the school drama department. He began developing his talents as a singer and guitar player. He would play, for instance, at Mass at the Brophy Chapel when that was done. He would entertain us at Boondockers. I'm not sure if many people here know what Boondockers is. Over there on the table are 4 years worth of Brophy yearbooks covering Jeff's and my years there. In the back of one of them is a photo of a boondocker invitation. The fellow who is holding a scroll describing the location of the desert party looks suspiciously like an Irishman. I'm not sure who drew it, but anyway. So anyway, boondockers were typically beer-soaked events with fires in the desert. Again, most of us managed to avoid the attention of law enforcement with service parties. There is a picture in one of those yearbooks of Jeff playing guitar next to a fire, and I'm pretty sure that was taken with one of those boondockers. So high school was good for both of us. Besides the drama, the singing and whatnot, Jeff was also on the cheerleading, was a cheerleader for our all-boys school. He participated in a few other activities. We were on the school newspaper staff for 1 year. He participated a lot. He did the debate program at Brophy, I think, for 4 years running. He was real good at that. He could always overpower his opponents with nothing else but the strength of his voice. But our activities, I suppose you could say, in high school did diverge somewhat, but that really didn't reduce the strength or importance of our friendship. I was talking to Al Garbonati last night on the phone. Al now lives in Prescott. He was our classmate in Brophy and also became one of our small circle of lifelong friends. And we were reminiscing about our years together and our time with Jeff. Al said that what he remembers most about Brophy is our social milieu. He remembered friendships as being the most important thing about our high school experience, not all the other things going on. He said everything else to him was just wallpaper, aside from the friendships. And I think I feel the same way about it, and I kind of think Jeff probably did as well. It's hard to understand the nature of augmented friendship, excuse me. It's as if longtime friendships provide amazing enrichment to our lives. It's as if they become part of our lives, part of our personality. I didn't really intend to become metaphysical here tonight, but sorry. Just as Jeff's friendship for a lifetime enriched my life, and I hope I enriched his, I think it's a little diminishing when a good friend like that passes. That's the way life goes on. So, from one of our little get-togethers many years ago, probably about 35 years ago or so, there was a leftover bottle of Chivas Regal Scotch. And our agreement back then amongst the five of us was that the last person to marry got that bottle of Scotch, and that was me. So our plan was at some point after that last marriage, we were all going to gather and open it and drink it down. And that never happened. It should have happened at our 40th reunion, because we were all together at that, but I forgot to bring the bottle with me. So I have two remaining lifelong friends from that era, Al Carbonati and Tom Kolash. And at some point later this year, we're all going to get together and have our own little combination boondocker Irish wake in the desert for Jeff. Rose Raiders.
I'm Ken Bergner, and I'm very honored to be invited to you. Thank you so much. Nobody ever wants to talk about these things unless they're a minister, but the truth is that we all come, we all go, and it's really, I think it's important that we get together when something like this happens and talk about the wonderful things that an individual brought into each of our lives. I was not blood to Jeff because he was obviously an orphan. I didn't go to school with him because he was older than I was. I didn't marry into the family, although somehow he became a huge part of our family. I met Jeff when I was 12. He was 21, 22. He was actually my future brother-in-law's roommate in college. They were going to school. He was at USIU in San Diego, and Ron was at UCSD. And Lori, my sister, knew both of them. Apparently Lori, my older sister, had gone to Sora High School in Scottsdale, was in theater, and knew Jeff in theater. They did community theater together. We didn't know this, we never met Jeff. And Jeff and Ron went to high school together at Brophy. We didn't know this. But somehow, the three of them hooked up together in San Diego. And apparently at some point, Jeff and Lori were dating, but then Ron and Lori started dating, and it was the 70s. It's pretty confusing. But anyway, the first time I met Jeff, actually, I had gone out to visit my sister in San Diego, and was very pleased to have a weekend in San Diego, almost unaccompanied, because I was with my older sister, soon-to-be brother-in-law. But Lori had to work, and Ron had to work, so they left me with Jeff. I was 13. So Jeff borrowed Ron's UCSD pass somehow and got us into the UCSD student union. And on the way, of course, picked up a six-pack of Elephant Malt liquor, which I'd never had before. We had a great night. But Jeff and I became fast friends. But very, very soon he became a huge part of our family because he would show up at every family event, every Christmas, every birthday. You name it, Jeff was there. He would sit in our living room and play that guitar, and that huge booming voice that just carried everywhere. We were just so enraptured because it wasn't just the man of the music, or the smile, or the twinkle in his eye. It was the way he made you feel. And I don't know that he told me this, but I certainly heard it somewhere along the line. It doesn't matter what you say to somebody, but it's how you make them feel that matters. And Jeff made everyone feel awesome to be with him. You know, Jeff, I noticed here today, I didn't know this, but he wanted to be called the meanest man in the county. Well, that came after we met Jeff. But there was the mean bone in this man's body. In fact, you know, if I had to say anything about Jeff, it was his kindness. That if I remembered one thing about Jeff, it would be his kindness. And somehow, through all the years and all the hell that the world would throw at you, he never let the world change who he was at his core. He remained, to the day he passed, one of the nicest men you could ever know. And that's why we're all here, right? Because he was just that kind of guy. And I don't know how you honor somebody at a discussion time like this, but I think the best way I can think of to honor Jeff's legacy would be to take in to myself the best part of Jeff, which was his kindness. So if I could go forward tomorrow and be a nicer, more gentle, more kind individual because of knowing Jeff, that'd be amazing. So that's how I would like to honor Jeff. I also want to say that Jeff becomes such a huge part of our family. He never forgot Mom's birthday. He never forgot to call Mrs. B at Christmas time. My mother loved Jeff. I think there were times when she loved Jeff more than Ron. Yes, it got a little weird. But Jeff was just so good to my mom that he never forgot her at any time. And she and he had a very unique relationship. In fact, there's a book back here that has a letter that Mom wrote to Jeff in 1983. I was graduating from college at that point. But it's just because they were so close. They had a relationship that transcended the relationship between she and my sister, or she and Ron, or anything. Ron and Lori were a huge part of our family, obviously, but Jeff somehow wangled his way in there. And Mom just loved him as though he was her own. That's the kind of guy Jeff was. So anyway, I didn't prepare anything special to talk about. I just wanted to talk from the heart. That's what this is. So, like I said, the best way I can honor Jeff is to take into myself that part of him that I remember the best, and that was his kindness. So, thank you for letting me.
Makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. When your heart is in your dreams, no request is too extreme. When you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. Fate is kind, she brings to those who love the sweet fulfillment of their secret longing. Like a bolt out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you through. When you wish upon a star, your dreams come.
Hey, well, I don't know if you heard about Kid Sweetwater, but real strange, I'm telling you. Hi, kids. All right, thirsty. Hey, we'll see you later, huh? Yeah. Hey, what's your full name? What's your full name? Cletus? Cletus J. Sweetwater. Thank you. What's the J stand for? John? No. Jack? No. John? No. You said that. I give up. Stands for Joanne. Cletus Joanne Sweetwater. Don't blame me. This is Catherine who raised me. Or I didn't know anything about it. He's not ready. He's not ready. He's looking at equipment now. I'm going to see. Okay, anyway. Wait a minute. If he's not ready, I'm going to see. I don't care who knows it. You want to hear kids sing a quick song? All right. Okay, take it away. A sweet young thing was jilted by her husband. She wrote a note and went his merry way. With tear eyes, she wrote a kind letter, in which her broken heart had this to say. Little Bergner, I'm returning every caress that you gave me, every sweet love letter that you wrote, and that we do come, every sweet memento that I cherished, the locket that I wore around my throat. Right here. The clothes you find the mortgage to the house, yeah. What I say you must admit is true. I'm returning everything except the baby. That's the one thing that I didn't get from you when he was out of
This goes out to Golda and Beulah, Captain Andy of Scottsdale and La Jolla, and Papa John Martin over in the Big Island of Hawaii.
morning stars tonight, I'm finding numbers. Every glass of wine, you are the night before. Doesn't matter anymore. He blows his boots out like a man. Takes a shovel in his hands and he hits the work just like his dad before. The laborer in motion, feeling big and strong, but back his hands on the wall beneath, and the messages of the shuffle get in hands. The day is gone, sun is storm, it lingers on, and it's a city job to do. The men living and the kids gotta eat, so it's best he sees it through. Yeah, it's best to see the kids stay close and the rest coming through. Still he prays for something new to come into his life. But then at night, when he sees his kids sleep, bright-eyed angels, that everything's alright, and then he smiles. And he goes for them, that he'll do it all again. And so he's ready for the morning sun, another day to be begun. He knows his heart's way done before he's done, but it doesn't care. It's all there. Play the game and pay the fare. It's a busy job to do, but he smiles like a man set free, 'cause he knows he'll see it through. Yeah, he knows he'll see it, knows he'll see it, knows he'll see it through.
If this cowboy's really taking you against your will, I suppose I'll have to stop him from it.
You just don't know this cowboy. He's mean.
I reckon I can. Now you just relax. I'll be right close to you. If there's any trouble, I will stop you.
You don't have to worry for Bergner. He's very respected around town. He's never lost a fight.
Well, what are you talking about? Hell, of course I lost the fight once.
Police always said you were invincible.
Bring no man is invincible. Man's gonna learn that. Look at America. Now, sometimes it's gonna go to these people. That's what makes the difference between life and love. I'll never go east of Denver again. Denver again. Oh, Denver again. If I never go east of Denver again, it'll be too soon. Honey, it'll be too soon. You can't have your Chicago, leave me down in late below. Hidey, 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 ho. If I never go east of Denver again, Denver again, oh Denver again. If I never go east of Denver again, it'll be too soon. Honey, it'll be too soon. Like a man in Alabama, sweetest people, honey lamb, of the winter that is holy damn. Anger made in Alabama. If I never go east of Denver again, Denver again, Lord Denver again. If I never go east of Denver again.
Jeffrey Kenny with you in the music for a scorching San Francisco afternoon. Just got an information, Dolores. It's 100 degrees in the Bay City, and folks, it doesn't get much hotter than that. Hey, K-Bird safety reminder. A new law was just passed by the San Francisco City Council concerning drivers and pedestrians. If you hit them, you keep them, unless you have some extra feature space around here. How do you better follow that law right down to the letter? Hey, I don't know about you, but I had so much fun with that last Johnny Arpeggio cut. Let's go for one more time here. This is Johnny Arpeggio doing an old Elvis Presley standard, I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. And Johnny can't help falling in love with anybody, never could. And you can't help falling in love with Johnny on KBRT, Radio San Francisco.
Give you all a moment after that. Well, I can't do this without a script, so I apologize if I'm looking down. I'll be reading this. First, I'm Richie Parker from Seattle, okay? I'll be reading this because when I talk to two or more people at a time,
I tend to get nervous, wander off topic, and lose my place. The one characteristic that Jeff and I had in common there was wandering off topic when we talk to each other, at least when he and I talk to each other. So I won't get into any late night conversations I have with Jeff on the phone just yet. I'll save that for later, okay? I am sad to say that Jeff and I hadn't seen each other in many years, and Jeff would always say when we talked to each other that we had to get together soon, before one of us passed. And so it was a little late when I made the mad dash to Reno after hearing of his illness. I sat next to him praying when I got here, hoping he'd talk to me as he did in one of our phone calls, not giving me a minute to respond before he jumped into his next story. All the time hoping and believing that he knew I was there. Jeff was a storyteller, and he told me about his times with friends past and present. And I'm certain I've heard stories about many of you. I know I've heard the names of all people on the bill today. I don't remember when I first met Jeff, but I do remember the first time he dragged me to Tommy's Joint, a famous San Francisco pub and eatery that claimed to have beers from over 75 countries and every kind of meat and carb a real man could ask for. Okay? I remember that at that first time we went, Jeff got himself an American beer and 2 hard-boiled eggs while sitting in the bar. No. Every time we'd go there, it was the same. But the first time was special. You see, I was introduced to Jeff by my darling wife-to-be, Sharon, the redhead over there. Okay. It quickly became clear to me that Jeff was very protective of her and was giving me the big brother. He was checking me out, but or at least so I thought. Jeff questioned me about Sharon, about how Sharon and I got together. He already knew I was working for Diane Feinstein. Not a plus with Jeff. All right. We sat there for some time, and I told him how I spotted Sharon and told my office coworker I'm going to marry after all. I was on the committee to re-elect Diane Feinstein, and we were talking about it. And I see this redhead there, and I said, I'm going to marry this girl. I talked to her briefly. He just laughed and said, you don't have a chance. Okay? 2 months after that, after Sharon and I had our first date, we were engaged, and 6 months later, we were married. Well, I can't remember if Jeff told me right then at that first time at Tommy's Joints or another visit to Tommy's, but he did thank me for the talk and said it was a piece of history to be he'd been waiting for on Sharon. The storyteller quickly came back with a song called The Winning of Sherry Hill. Sharon and I both are Irish, as many of you here are apparently. I wish I had worn my Irish tie today. A little green here. Jeff performed that piece like a true Irishman, and he sang it at our wedding. It was a beautiful song. She was Dylan's darling daughter. Now she's Parker's pride and joy. Jeff and his wife at the time, Kate, and our good friends, Candy and Jim Frazier, talking about another era there from what you guys talked about while sitting at the table over there. Candy and Jim Frazier, and a guy named Bill Robeson, all worked in the kitchen preparing and serving the food and drink for our wedding reception. I know it's a lot to ask, but they were great friends, and I know we're having a good time also, as we have them on our wedding video in the kitchen performing hat tricks in the kitchen utilizing Jeff's trademark Oliver Party Derby. We had great fun together in those days, and Bill would surprise us driving down from Seattle where he lived to join us on occasion. Right now I'm going to read from a letter Bill sent reminiscing about his moments with Jeff. Bill's sorry he was unable to be here today, but he wanted to share these thoughts. So this from Bill. It is a pleasure and a privilege to give a little bit of the history of my relationship with Jeff. We first worked together in 1978 in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We played the gangsters in the musical Kiss Me Kate. Jeff actually named our characters. In the script, we were referred to as Gangster Number 1 and Gangster Number 2. He chose the names Augie and Guido. He adopted that, right? He adopted that name from me and referred to me as Augie throughout our entire relationship. In 1980, Jeff and I toured together for about 3 or 4 months doing school assemblies. It was a company called Robin Hood Players, a sort of fly-by-night company that booked us in many school assemblies. We lived on 7-Eleven burritos and shared Motel 6 rooms for a long time. The tour ended for me when I had had enough, and we basically lied to the producer and said that Jeff lied to the producer for me and said I had left the company and disappeared. The truth was, in reality, we drove back to Arizona with the company with me stowed away in the van. And, the next time Jeff and I spent a lot of time together was in Round Mountain, Nevada. My friend Jeannie convinced me to come there and work in the summer because her father was general manager of an open-air pit gold mine. Our buddy Ron Mann and I lived in a shack with no electricity and no plumbing in the dead of winter in the middle of Nevada. Jeff lived just a few blocks away in a converted recreational vehicle that he bought from an old man named Rex who sold it to him cheap. Some of my favorite memories during that time were sitting out by the fire pit, smoking some pot, drinking some beer. You don't do that, Jerry, right? Okay. Drinking some beer, and Jeff would play music on his guitar and sing. Those countless wonderful nights listening to Jeff sing was one of my most pleasurable and amazing times that I can remember during that period of my life. It was just another crazy, wonderful chapter in our relationship. Jeff and I seemed to come together in different cities, in different situations for a long time. He was such a talent, and his musical ability was amazing, as you all know. He made us laugh and was one of our best friends, both Ron and mine. I considered him a dear friend and someone with whom I had many amazing memories. Jeff and I spent a lot of time together over the years, including the time we spent in San Francisco. I thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of our history with you. That concludes Bill's letter, and thank you to Bill for that. Now I want to say that, yes, Jeff did always refer to Bill as Augie. I never heard him refer to him as Bill. He'd written a song for Augie before I met either of them called Tap Dance Tommy. And I don't know if any of you have come across that, Julie, but if you get that, find that one. I know Bill would love a copy of it. So anyway, Jeff and I met in San Francisco, a political bubble. Me, the liberal, and Jeff, well, not. Jeff always said that we can give each other hell about our differences and remain friends because we're like brothers. Hallie, he'd say, I love it. But we traveled some of the same circles. Jeff was stationed in the Army in Fort Lee, New Jersey, while I was on the other side of the Hudson, just across the George Washington Bridge in the Bronx, where I grew up. Jeff loved to say that I grew up in Fort Apache and was tough for surviving that. The truth is, my mother's cousin owned a bar in my neighborhood, and Paul Newman and Ed Ashton came to eat there while filming the movie Fort Apache, the Bronx, which was about the 43rd precinct of the South Bronx. Anybody see that one? Okay. Well, I lived on the border of Fort Apache, but in a good neighborhood. When I told Jeff just a few months ago that actually I didn't actually live in Fort Apache, he said, listen, it's too late. You're already part of the legend. The story continues. So I don't know if I'm a legend with you guys. Okay, but I know you talked a lot to me about you guys too. So, Jeff also lived in Seattle for a while, long before Sharon and I moved there. When we told him we were headed there, he said, Seattle is just San Francisco with a flannel shirt. Jeff was a Cubs fan and I a Yankee fan. This he was gracious about and would always call to congratulate me right after the Yankees won a championship. One of my favorite tunes that Jeff sang, and I can still hear him doing, was, Do They Still Sing the Blues in Chicago? In Chicago, they still sing the blues. A lament but the long-suffering Cubby fan. 3 years ago, the Cubs finally won the World Series, and they stopped singing that song. But I will always remember Jeff. And when my time comes, maybe he'll welcome me with it. I also loved his version of the Eagles classic, Desperado. Jeff was a storyteller, as you all know, a gifted songwriter, painting his picture in song, but he was also an incredible interpreter of others' music. He did great covers always. We often went to hear him play in San Francisco during those days at such venues as the famous San Francisco Cannery down at the Wharf. You all remember that. Jeff eventually became a radio DJ. I had a t-shirt made for him giving him his own radio call letters, K-Jeff. He got a kick out of that. Jeff was very generous, and he frequently sent me things he came across that he knew I'd enjoy, about the Yankees, or some of the great characters we both loved. We were both big Laurel and Hardy fans. We also agreed that the two greatest shows of all time were the Old Dick Van Dyke Show and The Honeymooners, starring Jackie Gleason as Ralph Cramden and Ed Norton as his best friend, Art Carney. I also knew it was Jeff on the other end when he called me, because the first words I would hear would be, "Not! Not!" And I immediately respond, hey, Ralphie boy. I don't have the same inflection as Jeff could do. So, there is a rather inappropriate story that he always repeated to me in this regard, and you can ask me about that later. I was given the honor of being best man at his wedding to Kate. Also, Sharon and I are godparents to their wonderfully talented and sweet son, Jordan. Jeff, you are a fine musician, and I know that you are very proud of the musician Jordan has come to be. He's playing for us today. He is one hot guitarist. I gotta tell you.
Oh, you're too kind.
You are. My one regret, I read this morning and I fell apart. My one regret, as I said when I started, is that I didn't come to see Jeff and Julie sooner. I will tell you, if you have someone important to you, don't lose touch, don't wait. Go see them now. One good thing about my trip down here 6 weeks ago was I finally got to meet Julie, and I couldn't have been more impressed with how much she loved Jeff and cared for him. I know Jeff still had struggles, but I could tell he found some peace in his home near the mountains, where he could sit in his yard with his lovely Julie and their two puppies. Jeff, I will miss you, pally, and I'm glad you are part of my life.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Wade. I also need a script to get through this. My name is Tim Wade. And Jeff Ullman was and always will be my friend. For a long time, I could literally not get rid of the guy. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it seemed we were together. Jeff and I were joined at the hip. Thank God Julie came along, diverted his attention long enough for me to get away. I was fortunate enough to be born and raised in San Francisco, a city of incredible beauty and tolerance. The city welcomed every walk of life and every type of character. The perfect landing spot for a guy like Jeff. Along the way, I was able to work at some pretty cool places. I'm not sure if I sought these places out or was just dumb luck. Working in interesting places meant getting to meet a lot of interesting people. I met Jeff Ullman just after the San Francisco earthquake of 1989. I was the assistant head usher at the Curran Theater in San Francisco, and Les Mis was coming to San Francisco for the first time. We had to hire 20 ushers to be ready. This job also attracted colorful and creative people. Jeff, again, fit the bill perfectly. When I had met Jeff, it occurred to me that he should be on the stage and not leading someone to a seat in the balcony. I got to know Jeff pretty quickly. We were both fond of good story and loved telling them over a beverage or two. At the time, a few of us also worked on Alcatraz Island. We would work during the day on the island and at night in the theater. Jeff quickly joined this group. Alcatraz by day, Curran at night and weekends. Cable car rides and ferry trips across the bay were our mode of travel. Jeff and I ended up spending a lot of time together, riding to and from the island, killing time before the theater, and of course working the jobs. Jeff always had a story to tell. He would tell me about life on the road as an actor, as a musician, working in the mines, working in West Berlin. Jeff had seen a lot. During this time, Jeff told me about his young son, Jordan, and how much he loved his boy. It was a struggle for Jeff to work so much and still maintain a large role in his son's life. After having broken up with Jordan's mother, Kate, Jeff would tell me of the regret of lost time with his son, but quickly move on to tell me what a great musician his son would be. I think Jordan was 2 at the time. No one ever accused Jeff of a lack of enthusiasm or a lack of embellishment. We all now know that Jordan has become a gifted musician and the pride of his father, Jeff. The longer I got to know Jeff, the more I realized that he, like many of us, had his demons. These circumstances brought Jeff to a studio apartment in a horrible building in the Tenderloin, San Francisco. Jeff's friends convinced him it was time to move into a better space. We found him an apartment a half a block from the current theater, 3 blocks from the old place he lived in, but really a world apart. This was the first of 3 times that I helped Jeff move. Johnny, Cryer, Huff, and I got everything moved, and we knew Jeff was heading in the right direction. Jeff was a flawed, but fundamentally good man. He wanted the best for his family and his friends, but at times neglected himself and his own well-being. Jeff moving on up made me feel good about his future. For a time, I was a bartender in San Francisco, and Jeff was convinced that I'd become a famous San Francisco barman. The famous columnist Herb Cain would often write about such bartenders in the San Francisco Chronicle. Each of these guys had a nickname, and inspired Jeff to start calling me Chuckles. I never made it into the Chronicle, but for years after that, every correspondence I got from Jeff was addressed to T. Chuckles Wade. After giving up bartending career and returning to Alcatraz, Jeff and I were together again. Working in the bookstore, we labored under the direction of the great Stan Zielkowski. Stan was literally the best boss I ever had. He had a clear vision of what needed to be done, and yet flexible enough to manage every type of personality. Stan once confided to his wife Margaret that he considered Jeff and I his special projects. Jeff and I would often spend the night on Alcatraz. We would wake up at 5 in the morning to meet a barge that would also with supplies and products that were sold in the bookstores on the island. Jeff and I would spend the night barbecuing and drinking in front of the plaza of the cell house. We would wander around the island talking about life and enjoying our private view of San Francisco and the surrounding Bay Area. It was hard to believe that we were being paid for this pleasure. The night would end with Jeff playing the guitar and singing songs. Some were old folk songs, and other were songs that Jeff had written about co-workers, usually not good songs. We would fall asleep laughing our asses off. Jeff would meet his future wife, Julie, while living at the new apartment and working on Alcatraz. Julie started working at the Current. Jeff and Julie soon became a couple. The theater was magical in that regard. I also met my wife, Michelle, working at the theater. This was the first time since meeting Jeff that he seemed truly happy. There was someone who loved him for who he truly was. And as you all know, Jeff liked to talk a lot. And Jeff talked about Julie a lot. Our friend Johnny Cryer did a great Jeff impression. Johnny was about 5'6", 140 pounds. He would mimic a deep voice, wave his hands in the air, mumble really fast, repeating whatever Jeff had just said. This always made us laugh. I was also often asked to translate what Jeff said, and I did not always have the answer. Jeff was never a shrinking violet, and always said what was on his mind, whether it was good for him or not, and whether it was politically correct or not. It does not always sit well in politically correct San Francisco, but if you wanted an interesting or different point of view, Jeff was your man. When we were married, Michelle and I asked Jeff to sing at our wedding. In typical Jeff fashion, he failed to show up for the rehearsal the night before. Of course, he made it to the after party and assured me he'd be there the next morning. Sure enough, he showed up and did a wonderful job of the wedding song. Michelle and I remember that to this day. I've been an Ullman Catholic my entire life and only stepped out on my faith for one day. This was the day I became a preacher. When Jeff and Julie got married, they decided to have a ceremony in San Francisco and a ceremony down in San Bernardino with Julie's family. The ceremony in San Francisco was at the Presidio, and that I decided that I should be the one to wed them. Jeff and Julie went online and had me ordained as a minister. I did okay, they did great, and we all had a wonderful time. I was never prouder. I served the dual role of preacher and cake provider. I also went down south with them to San Bernardino and was the best man at the wedding. It was outdoors, it was beautiful, and I must confess, the person overseeing the ceremony may have done a better job than I did. Michelle and I moved to Oakland in 1997. We found a one-bedroom apartment in Rockridge with a balcony overlooking a pool. We loved that place. and Jeff and Julie soon moved over after us. Once again, Johnny, Puff, and I helped them move. This was another positive step in the direction for Jeff's life. Jeff and I began to carpool to San Francisco, and if you're wondering if Jeff turned off at 6 in the morning, the answer is no. All news stories were points of discussion, and every politician a fool for Jeff to speak about. My mornings became much more entertaining. Michelle and I eventually bought a house in Vallejo and raised 2 beautiful daughters and a handsome son. Jeff and Julie winded up in Reno, where yes, we helped them move again. All 3 of my kids got to meet and know Jeff and Julie. They call them Uncle Jeff and Aunt Julie. I saw a lot less of Julie and Jeff over the ensuing years, and I regret that deeply. But thank you, Julie, Jordan, for letting me speak today. And I love you, Brother Jeff. I will miss you forever. Thank you.
Once was enough, here I am back for more. This song that I'm about to play, anyone who knows my father knows that this pretty much sums my dad up in a nutshell. If you'll indulge me, I'd probably like to sit right up here and play it for y'all. It's steady. There we go. There we go. Sorry about that.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Thank you, Mike, Ken, Mitch, and Tim, for sharing stories and memories. And for Jordan. His dad always said you should sing more. He had a great voice, and he was right. You should. I would like to share a few of my favorite memories of Jeff, and I think that I hope that everyone here learned something a little bit new about Jeff that maybe they didn't know before. I certainly did. Jeff also was an ordained minister with Universal Life Church, had a license from the internet before the internet was really big. He performed 3 weddings, 2 in San Francisco and 1 in Reno. And the first wedding he performed for Peter and Monica, and one of them was Jewish and one of them was Catholic. So he managed to combine a little of both faiths with the smashing of the glass at the end as well. That was him. He could definitely put him in a situation and he would find a way to make it even better. Jeff always gave me 2 cards for my birthdays or holidays. One was silly and one was romantic. And later it was often one from him and one from the dogs. No one was a stranger with Jeff. He knew the names of the folks who worked at the Tamarack Junction restaurant and at Maverick, and usually something about them, like their child's name or their favorite football team. He'd give you this shirt off his back. Once at the Sparks Library, a lady ran out of gas and he gave her $25. And she wrote a thank you note about how much it meant to her for him to help her and that she would pay him back. I don't know if she did. We wore Clado rings as our engagement rings. It's part of his Irish heritage. He loved words. He would write down little sayings, jokes, or phrases on scrap pieces of paper or in small notebooks. One of those little notes is up on the dish that Debbie brought, the full cannon, and he brought it to Debbie's retirement party 10 years ago, in June. And she asked for the recipe, and so he scribbled a few ingredients down for her. I still find those in the notebooks and things at home, just little bits of paper. He always gave nicknames to people like Chuckles, Chuckwagon, Norton, and Augie. On road trips, he would read highway signs aloud, like Benicia Martinez, and then say, she was a grand old actress. And he would do that the whole trip. When he would see the sign for a soft shoulder, he'd reach over and he'd go, yep. Sure is. And he loved the Cubs. The reason he loved the Cubs, what he said, was that when he was growing up, most of the kids his age, most of the boys that he hung out with, had favorite baseball teams or sports teams, and they knew all the stats and the scores and all of that. And he chose the Cubbies because he didn't have to know those things. He always knew they were at the bottom. And if they weren't at the bottom, he said, wait until the All-Star break. He also loved the Packers. He once watched a game, or more than one game, with his grandpa, AP, who he loved. And it was one of those games where it was snowing with freezing temperatures. And his grandpa told him that those guys were tough enough to play football in those conditions, then you had to love them, you had to back them. So he was a lifelong Packer fan. The first time Jeff met my 3-year-old niece Jessica, he had a goatee. No one else in my family had facial hair, not even the women. Jessica sat near him on the couch and stared, and then she pointed to his goatee and asked, "What is that?" When Jeff told her it was a beard, she said, "I want one." For the next few years, whenever we visited, we brought her a beard made of felt or a Santa beard, and the pictures were in the show. He was so proud of owning his own home. He spent many years without a real home, traveling, hitchhiking, etc. And he was really proud that his dad, Gordon, got to see the house before his dad passed away in 2003. Jeff was adopted. So was his pal, Al Garbinati. Al was one of his best friends in middle and high school, along with Mike and those guys. He was a great, big, tall fellow, and he was also very Italian, as Jeff would describe it. Jeff said that Al ate anchovy paste from a tube during class, and the nuns were not amused. Years later, Al was able to get a copy of his original birth certificate, and he found out he was actually 100% Scottish. When Jeff was finally able to obtain a copy of his own original birth certificate, he was tickled to find out that he was Irish, just like he'd always thought, or wished. He'd spent many years in the company of Mike, John, Ma, and Da Sullivan in Phoenix, and he loved everything Irish. He never got to visit Ireland, but it was always a part of him. And Mike told you that story, which is similar to the story that Jeff tells. It just, I also won't mention what that means. Jeff loved business cards. He never picked up just one business card. He always took 5 or 6 with him, and he would share them with others if they needed a good mechanic or a good dentist. He still had the business cards of the motels we stayed at during our honeymoon on the Oregon coast, including the Motel Rialto, where he stayed at when we got married. When our oldest nephew Tyler and his family came to Reno to visit us a number of years ago, we had just moved into our home. Tyler had never been there before. He was about 6 or 7 years old, and he and his dad Todd had been fishing a few times. Jeff ran across a 4-foot-long fish pillow, a rainbow trout, at Big Lots. When Tyler got to our house, it was dark, and I told him there was a fishing pond off the back deck. It was too dark to see anything, but I told him we caught fish all the time, and I handed him a stick. Jeff had tied the fish pillow to the end of the line on the stick and was hiding under the deck. When Tyler took hold of it, Jeff gave it a couple of big yanks. It scared Tyler to death. He dropped the stick and he ran to his parents. Jeff had to come out from hiding and tell Tyler he didn't mean to scare him, it was just a joke. And Tyler kept the fish pillow for years and years. Jeff called my sisters, Jody's oldest 3 girls, Pal, Button, and Little Bit. He took pride in doing a good job. At the Sparks Library, he recorded the phone message for holidays and things that had to be updated every holiday. He would record it at work, and he would call it multiple times from the house and listen and make sure it was just right. It was important to him. When we were moving into our new house, the 2 dogs next door barked and barked, especially the boxer. Jeff would speak softly to them, saying "Shaw Makushla," which is Gaelic for something like "Shaw, my baby," or "my little one." And it would calm the boxer down. When we met our neighbor Marilyn, she told us the boxer's name was Shawshank, or Shaw. Jeff was speaking her name to her without even knowing it. Marilyn became a best friend and one of the family. Her son Josh and Jeff had kindred spirits. Both had experienced similar rough times in their lives, and they had a unique connection, and he always called him his brother from another mother. Josh's daughter Sarah was also often at Marilyn's house. Jeff met her when she was really little, probably about 3 years old. And Sarah had stepped on something in the yard and pricked her foot. And she started crying, so Jeff brought over a giant Band-Aid for her and put it on her toe and gave her a kiss to stop it from hurting. When Jeff turned 50, he had a short bucket list. Get a tattoo, his first. Ride a horse, which he hadn't done since high school. And jump out of an airplane. He managed to do 2.5 of those. He didn't jump out of an airplane, but he did jump off the stratosphere in Las Vegas, an 800-foot controlled free fall, twice. Once during the day and once at night. So that counts for something. He loved Hawaiian shirts, or as he called them, Kanaka shirts. He had a couple from the Big Island themselves, from his father-in-law, John Martin. He loves suspenders and hats of all kinds. We had to build a special shelf just to store all the hats. When I was 27, I had a friend who was moving to San Francisco to share a house with a couple of friends. I was working as an elementary school librarian and also at Walden Books. I had graduated from college. On a whim, I asked her if she thought there was room in the house for me if I moved to San Francisco. I had no real reason to go there. When people asked me why I was moving, I didn't have a good answer, just that I wanted to, that somehow I was supposed to be there. A couple months later, I answered a help wanted ad for a bartender job at the Curran Theater. I knew nothing about bartending, but the ad said no experience necessary, and it paid $8 an hour. So I didn't get the job, but a couple weeks later, I got a call from the head usher at the theater asking if I'd be interested in working as an usher, and that's where I met Jeff. There are no coincidences. I was supposed to be there because that's where Jeff was. Jeff is why I moved there and why I applied for a job I knew nothing about. He was waiting and had been waiting for me for 42 years. And I'm really glad he waited for me. Jeff had a wish that never came true. He wished that he could have made it as a working actor. He always said he didn't need to be a star, just a supporting actor. And it didn't work out for Hollywood, but he was the best supporting actor for everyone he knew. He made you feel important. He listened to you. He gave you his full attention. His most important role was to be a supporting actor for each of us instead of Hollywood. If he had made it in Hollywood, I would never have met him. He lived multiple lives in his lifetime, was married twice before, lived in Arizona, California, Idaho, Colorado, and Texas, was broke and unemployed at times, was briefly in the Army, worked in a gold mine in Round Mountain, Nevada, and at the Kingdom in Seattle. He wrote and sang songs in bars across the West, worked at Alcatraz Island and at KUKI Radio in Ukiah, California, had a son, and made hundreds of friends along the way. It took 42 years for him to find me. He's waiting for me again, and I know he'll always be there. He's in my heart and will be forever. Thank you all for your love and support and being here today with those who loved him. What a great man. A brother to all, a friend to everyone. Years ago, Jeff created a library program based on his Professor Ullman's folk review and medicine show. It was a little bit of Americana with songs and stories in a retro package. He presented it at multiple libraries. At the end of the show, he would play his guitar and sing When You Wish Upon a Star. He played it soft and slow, and when the song ended, it felt kind of sad. He would say, "I don't want to leave you on a sad note," and he would wrap up the show with his final number. And so we have Jeff's final number.
Grab your coat and grab your hat. Leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Let your heart go pitter-pat and a happy spring in your step. Oh, that I could be so sweet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk down the lane with my blues on parade. I'm not afraid, my lover, just another. If I never, ever, ever make a cent, well, I will be richer than Rockefeller. Hope does at my feet on the sunny side of the street.
Thank you, everyone. I hope we didn't make you too sad and we had some good memories and some happy times. And always remember Jeff and eat up some of that food. And we have the room for as long as we need it. So visit and share, and thank you for being here. Love y'all.
said, don't go on us and start reading off scripts.